June 18, 1944. 11:30 hours. Camp Hearn, Texas. The scorching Texas sun beat down mercilessly as the transport train carrying 847 German prisoners of war pulled into Camp Hearn, its whistle piercing the humid afternoon air. Inside the sweltering cattle cars, Unteroffizier Klaus Weber pressed his face against the wooden slats, watching endless cotton fields stretch toward a horizon that seemed to mock their defeat at Normandy just 12 days earlier. Weber had commanded a Wehrmacht reconnaissance unit during the chaotic retreat from Omaha Beach, witnessing firsthand the overwhelming material superiority that had crushed German resistance with mathematical precision. His men, survivors of the Afrika Korps, veterans of the Russian front, and fresh-faced conscripts who had believed Nazi propaganda about American weakness, now faced captivity in the homeland of their enemies. The prisoners' expectations of American prison camps had been shaped by Dr. Joseph Goebbels' relentless propaganda describing the United States as a nation of soft, decadent weaklings who would collapse under the pressure of total war. German soldiers anticipated harsh treatment, meager rations, and primitive conditions that would reflect American industrial inadequacy and moral corruption that Nazi ideology had proclaimed inevitable. Follow our channel for more incredible, untold stories of World War II that reveal the shocking truths behind the greatest conflict in human history. Camp Hearn sprawled across 1,500 acres of East Texas prairie, housing 4,800 German POWs in a facility that challenged every preconception about American military efficiency and humanitarian standards. Colonel James Morrison, the camp's commanding officer and a veteran of the Great War, had designed the facility according to Geneva Convention requirements that exceeded German treatment of Allied prisoners by standards that would soon become dramatically apparent. As the train cars opened, Obergefreiter Hans Richter stepped onto American soil with the wariness of a professional soldier who had learned to expect the worst from enemy territory. A former baker from Munich, whose family had endured rationing since 1940, Richter hadn't tasted sugar, chocolate, or fresh dairy products in over 2 years. His hollow cheeks and sunken eyes reflected the malnutrition that had plagued German forces as Allied bombing systematically destroyed supply lines. The processing began with American efficiency that exceeded German military standards for organization and record-keeping. Each prisoner was photographed, cataloged, and assigned identification numbers using IBM punch card systems that demonstrated technological sophistication German forces had encountered only in captured American equipment. Sergeant Mike O'Brien, a second-generation Irish-American from Chicago, supervised the intake with casual professionalism that suggested abundant resources rather than wartime scarcity. What struck the German prisoners immediately was the appearance of their American captors. Guards wore clean, well-fitted uniforms with equipment that showed no signs of shortage or improvisation. Their weapons gleamed with proper maintenance. Their boots were unmarked by desperation, and their casual discussions of weekend plans suggested men who viewed military service as temporary inconvenience rather than struggle for national survival. The most shocking revelation came during the medical examination process. American military physicians conducted health assessments using equipment and procedures that exceeded standards in German military hospitals even before the war's material shortages began. Dr. Sarah Chen, whose Chinese-American family had fled Japanese occupation in 1937, examined German prisoners with professional competence while noting malnutrition levels that reflected systematic collapse of German logistics. Hauptmann Friedrich Steiner, former commander of a panzer company destroyed at Villers-Bocage, observed the camp's infrastructure with growing amazement. Electrical systems provided consistent power, plumbing delivered hot and cold water on demand, and heating systems maintained comfortable temperatures despite Texas summer heat. American prisoner facilities exceeded comfort levels that German officers had enjoyed in their own barracks before the war. But the greatest shock awaited discovery in the camp's mess hall, where American abundance would challenge fundamental German assumptions about enemy capabilities and reveal the mathematical impossibility of German victory through evidence more devastating than any battlefield defeat. The first meal at Camp Hearn would transform German understanding of American industrial capacity from military assessment to existential revelation. June 18, 1944. 17:45 hours. Camp Hearn, Mess Hall. The dinner bell's resonant clang echoed across Camp Hearn as 847 German prisoners filed into a mess hall that defied every expectation, shaped by years of wartime scarcity and Nazi propaganda about American industrial weakness. Weber clutched his aluminum mess kit, pristine American manufactured equipment that exceeded quality standards for German military utensils, while mentally preparing for the watery soup and black bread that had sustained German forces during their final desperate months in France. Master Sergeant Tony Kowalski, a former Chicago meatpacking supervisor whose Polish immigrant family had fled German occupation in 1919, supervised meal service with systematic efficiency that transformed feeding nearly 5,000 prisoners into routine administrative procedure. The kitchen staff, comprising both American personnel and trusted German prisoners, operated with abundance that challenged German comprehension of wartime resource management. The first shock came when Richter received portions that exceeded German officer rations during peacetime prosperity. Roast beef, actual beef, not the ersatz meat substitutes German civilians had endured since 1942, filled half his plate alongside mashed potatoes made with real butter and fresh vegetables that many German soldiers hadn't seen in months. The quality and quantity of food served to enemy prisoners surpassed meals that German families considered luxury feasts. Steiner watched American kitchen operations with the analytical eye of a professional soldier who understood logistics and supply chain management. Refrigeration units maintained fresh dairy products, meat storage exceeded German military standards for food safety, and cooking equipment demonstrated industrial capacity that operated without material constraints. The Americans were feeding prisoners better than German forces fed their own personnel. The psychological impact deepened when prisoners discovered that meal service included choices, multiple entree options, various vegetables, different bread types, and dessert selections that suggested abundance rather than rationing. German military rations had been reduced to subsistence levels since 1943. Yet American prisoners received food variety that exceeded German civilian availability during the best pre-war years. Technical Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, whose Mexican-American family had found prosperity in Texas agricultural development, explained meal planning procedures that revealed systematic abundance. "We serve 15,000 meals daily," Rodriguez noted through a German interpreter. Nutritional standards require 3,200 calories per prisoner, with fresh meat 4 times weekly, dairy products daily, and seasonal vegetables as available. German soldiers had subsisted on 2,400 calories when supplies permitted. The preparation methods demonstrated American efficiency applied to humanitarian purposes. Steam tables maintained proper food temperatures. Portion control ensured consistent serving sizes, and sanitation procedures exceeded German hospital standards for cleanliness. Mass feeding operations that would have challenged German logistics even during peacetime functioned as routine procedure under American management. Quality control extended beyond nutrition to include palatability standards that reflected civilian expectations rather than military necessity. American cooks seasoned food for taste rather than preservation, used fresh ingredients rather than preserved alternatives, and maintained variety that prevented meal monotony. German prisoners were receiving restaurant-quality food in a detention facility. The cultural shock intensified when prisoners learned that American food abundance extended to camp personnel, local civilians, and military forces throughout the United States. Rationing existed, but remained minimal compared to German restrictions that had eliminated basic foods from civilian diets. Americans were fighting a global war while maintaining living standards that exceeded German peacetime prosperity. Storage facilities revealed the systematic nature of American food security. Warehouses contained months of supplies for full camp capacity, with delivery schedules ensuring continuous replenishment regardless of transportation challenges. German forces had operated with daily uncertainty about next meal availability, yet American prisoners received guaranteed nutrition that surpassed anything German military could provide. As evening approached and prisoners finished meals that would have been celebration feasts in Germany, conversations buzzed with nervous energy about implications that extended beyond individual comfort to fundamental questions about German propaganda, American capabilities, and the mathematical impossibility of victory against such abundance. But the most devastating revelation awaited discovery in the camp's recreational facilities, where American luxury would challenge core German beliefs about enemy society and war production. June 19, 1944, 14:20 hours. Camp Hearn Recreation Center. The afternoon heat shimmered off the Texas plains as Weber and his fellow prisoners discovered the recreation center that would shatter their remaining illusions about American society and industrial capacity. What they found inside challenged not just their expectations of prison camp conditions, but their fundamental understanding of a nation they had been taught was weak, degenerate, and incapable of sustaining prolonged warfare. The first impossible sight was the soda fountain dispensing ice-cold Coca-Cola to prisoners who hadn't tasted carbonated beverages since before the war began. Corporal Jimmy Sullivan, a 19-year-old from Boston, whose Irish family had arrived in America fleeing British oppression, operated the fountain with casual efficiency while explaining that prisoners could purchase soft drinks using camp scrip earned through work details. Richter approached the fountain with the caution of a man who suspected hallucination rather than reality. The Coca-Cola, genuine American Coca-Cola, not the saccharine substitutes German chemists had developed when sugar became unavailable, tasted exactly like the imported beverages he had enjoyed in Munich during the prosperous 1930s. The carbonation, sweetness, and distinctive flavor represented industrial luxury that German civilians had forgotten existed. But the true revelation came when Steiner discovered the camp's ice cream facility, where American abundance reached levels that defied German comprehension of wartime resource allocation. Staff Sergeant Betty Washington, an African-American from Georgia whose husband served with the Tuskegee Airmen in Italy, supervised ice cream production using fresh dairy cream, real sugar, and natural flavorings that created genuine ice cream rather than the frozen milk substitutes German confectioners had attempted with ersatz ingredients. The psychological impact on German prisoners was profound and immediate. Ice cream, actual ice cream made with ingredients German industry could no longer obtain, was being served to enemy prisoners while German children hadn't tasted such luxury in over 2 years. The mathematical implications were staggering. America possessed sufficient sugar, dairy, and refrigeration capacity to provide premium desserts to prisoners while maintaining civilian consumption and military rations. The chaos of German understanding reached crisis proportions when prisoners learned that ice cream production was routine rather than special treatment. American military forces received ice cream rations as standard procedure. Civilian populations purchased ice cream commercially without rationing restrictions, and even frontline combat units had access to frozen desserts through mobile facilities that delivered luxury items to soldiers fighting overseas. Technical analysis of American ice cream production revealed industrial capacity that exceeded German comprehension. Refrigeration equipment operated continuously despite electricity demands that would have overwhelmed German power systems. Dairy supplies arrived fresh daily from Texas ranches that maintained cattle herds larger than entire German agricultural districts. Sugar allocation for recreational purposes exceeded total German sugar production for essential military and medical requirements. The confrontation between German scarcity and American abundance became personal when Weber wrote his first letter home, struggling to describe camp conditions without triggering censorship while conveying truth about enemy capabilities. How could he explain ice cream availability to a wife who hadn't seen sugar in months? How could he describe Coca-Cola service to children who drank ersatz coffee made from roasted acorns? Intelligence value of prisoner observations extended beyond individual comfort to strategic assessment of American industrial capacity. If Americans could provide luxury items to prisoners, what resources were available for military production? If civilian populations enjoyed abundance while fighting global war, what margins existed for increased military output? The implications challenged fundamental German assumptions about enemy limitations. Camp educational programs revealed systematic American approach to prisoner management that exceeded humanitarian requirements while demonstrating organizational competence. Libraries contained current books and magazines. Recreational equipment included recent sporting goods, and entertainment facilities provided movies and music that reflected continuing cultural production despite wartime demands. As evening approached, German prisoners faced psychological crisis that extended beyond military defeat to comprehensive reassessment of enemy society, industrial capacity, and mathematical certainty of continued resistance against overwhelming abundance that rendered German sacrifice increasingly meaningless. June 22, 1944, 08:15 hours. Camp Hearn workshop areas. The climactic revelation of American abundance reached its devastating peak when German prisoners began work assignments that exposed the systematic efficiency behind recreational luxuries they had witnessed. Weber found himself assigned to the camp's ice cream production facility, where he would learn that American luxury for prisoners represented mere statistical noise in an industrial system that operated at scales beyond German imagination. Staff Sergeant Washington supervised German workers with professional competence that revealed the human foundation of American industrial superiority. A former dairy technician from Atlanta, whose family had migrated north during the Great Depression, Washington applied scientific methods to ice cream production that exceeded quality standards in German commercial facilities, even during peacetime prosperity. Her knowledge reflected educational opportunities and technical training that democratic society had provided, regardless of racial barriers that still existed. The mathematical horror became apparent when Weber calculated daily ice cream consumption against German national production figures. Camp Hearn produced 500 gallons daily for prisoner consumption, equivalent to 1 week's ice cream output for the entire city of Berlin during rationed wartime conditions. American prisoners consumed luxury products in quantities that exceeded German civilian availability by ratios that made continued resistance appear mathematically absurd. Richter's assignment to the camp bakery revealed bread production that challenged his professional understanding of wartime resource management. American flour was genuinely white rather than the gray ersatz bread German civilians had accepted as normal since 1941. Sugar was available for sweetening rather than reserved exclusively for military rations. Butter was real dairy butter rather than synthetic substitutes that German chemistry had developed when animal fats became unavailable. The tragic irony intensified when Richter learned that American bread rationing was voluntary rather than mandatory, with civilian cooperation rather than government coercion, maintaining adequate supplies for military requirements. German bakers had received detailed regulations specifying exact ingredients and portion sizes, while American bakers operated with abundance that enabled quality maintenance despite increased production demands. Steiner's work in the camp's maintenance department exposed American equipment standards that exceeded German military specifications for durability and performance. Refrigeration units operated continuously without breakdown. Electrical systems provided consistent power despite enormous demand, and plumbing delivered hot water that reflected energy abundance rather than conservation necessity. American infrastructure supported luxury consumption that German industry couldn't achieve under any circumstances. The human tragedy became personal through letters from home that described conditions in Germany that contrasted devastatingly with American prisoner treatment. Richter's wife wrote about ersatz coffee made from roasted grain, while he drank genuine coffee provided by camp facilities. Weber's children described rare sugar rations saved for special occasions, while he observed Americans discarding partially consumed desserts. Intelligence gathering through prisoner work assignments revealed American production capacity that rendered German war production statistically insignificant. Camp supplies arrived on schedule from facilities across the United States, with delivery networks that operated efficiently despite supporting global military operations. Transportation, manufacturing, and distribution systems functioned with reliability that German logistics had never achieved, even during peacetime. The psychological climax occurred when German prisoners realized that their relatively luxurious treatment represented American administrative routine rather than special humanitarian effort. Geneva Convention compliance was standard procedure rather than burden. Food quality reflected normal institutional standards rather than exceptional allocation. And recreational facilities demonstrated typical American approach to mass management rather than propaganda display. Quality control procedures for prisoner food service exceeded German standards for military officer meals. Statistical sampling ensured consistent nutrition across thousands of daily servings. Waste prevention methods minimized food loss while maintaining abundance that enabled generous portions. American efficiency created systematic humanitarian treatment that reflected industrial capacity rather than individual compassion. Personal stories from American camp personnel revealed the emotional foundation of systematic abundance. Washington's husband flew dangerous missions over Europe while she ensured German prisoners received luxury items. Sullivan's brother served in the Pacific, while he provided enemy soldiers with soft drinks that American civilians purchased without restriction. Democratic values created personal motivation for humanitarian treatment that exceeded military necessity. The climactic understanding emerged. American abundance wasn't temporary wartime allocation. It was peacetime living standard maintained despite global war, revealing industrial capacity that made German resistance not just militarily futile, but mathematically impossible. September 15, 1945, 1600 hours. Camp Herne Repatriation Center. 4 months after Germany's surrender, Weber stood in the same Texas heat where his understanding of American industrial capacity had been fundamentally transformed by ice cream and Coca-Cola. As he prepared for repatriation to a homeland devastated by Allied bombing and Soviet occupation, the statistical reality of German defeat had crystallized into personal comprehension that would influence his perspective for decades to come. The final accounting of American abundance during his captivity defied every assumption Weber had held about enemy capabilities and democratic society's capacity for sustained warfare. Camp Herne had provided German prisoners with nutrition exceeding 3,200 calories daily, while German civilians subsisted on rationed allotments of 1,800 calories. American luxury for prisoners had surpassed German living standards for free citizens even before the war began. Colonel Morrison's farewell briefing presented statistics that quantified the mathematical impossibility of German victory that ice cream consumption had symbolically represented. American food production had exceeded domestic requirements by margins that enabled feeding 12 million military personnel, supporting allied nations through Lend-Lease programs, and maintaining civilian living standards that surpassed German peacetime prosperity. Industrial capacity had rendered military strategy irrelevant through simple arithmetic of resource availability. The human legacy became apparent through personal transformation. Stories of German prisoners who had discovered democratic values through humanitarian treatment that exceeded Geneva Convention requirements. Weber had learned English from American guards who volunteered their time, received medical care that surpassed German military hospital standards, and participated in educational programs that revealed American society's complexity beyond Nazi propaganda's simplistic characterizations. Technical knowledge acquired through camp work assignments would influence post-war German industrial reconstruction in ways that extended American soft power beyond military victory. Richter had learned advanced bakery techniques that improved efficiency and quality simultaneously. Steiner had observed maintenance procedures that extended equipment life while reducing operational costs. Weber had witnessed systematic management approaches that maximized output while maintaining humanitarian standards. The psychological impact extended beyond individual prisoners to influence German societal understanding of American capabilities and democratic governance. Letters home had conveyed subtle messages about enemy abundance that contradicted official propaganda claims. Personal testimony from returning prisoners would challenge German assumptions about American society, industrial capacity, and systematic advantages of democratic organization over totalitarian control. Statistical analysis of prisoner health improvements during American captivity revealed the comprehensive nature of German wartime decline. Average weight gain of 25 pounds per prisoner reflected nutrition levels that German military personnel hadn't achieved since 1941. Dental care had addressed problems that German medical system couldn't treat due to material shortages. Physical rehabilitation had restored health that German society had sacrificed for military production. The long-term implications for German-American relations would be profound and lasting. Former prisoners became advocates for democratic governance and free market economics during post-war reconstruction. Personal experience of American abundance created appreciation for systematic advantages that competitive economics provided over centralized planning. Ice cream and Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola had become symbols of societal success rather than decadent luxury. Educational programs conducted during final months of captivity prepared German prisoners for reintegration into defeated society while maintaining appreciation for democratic values they had experienced. Language training, vocational education, and cultural orientation reflected American investment in post-war stability that exceeded revenge motivations. Systematic humanitarian treatment had created positive associations with American governance that would influence Cold War dynamics. Post-war interviews revealed that simple luxuries like ice cream and soft drinks had psychological impact exceeding military demonstrations of American power. Personal comfort and dignity during captivity had challenged German assumptions about enemy brutality while demonstrating systematic competence that extended beyond industrial production to human management. Abundance had been more persuasive than coercion in demonstrating democratic superiority. Follow our channel for more remarkable stories that reveal how American abundance and humanitarian values combined to win hearts and minds even among enemy prisoners, creating lasting change that extended far beyond military victory. The symbolic legacy remained forever captured in Weber's final letter home. The Americans defeated us not through cruelty, but through ice cream. They possess abundance so great that enemy prisoners live better than German citizens lived in peacetime. We did not lose to soldiers. We lost to a society that creates luxury from systematic efficiency, demonstrating mathematical certainty that resistance was futile from the moment America entered the war.